COINTELPRO, The War Within. There was a time, not too long ago, when American citizens believed the government existed to protect them, to honor their rights, to support their dreams. But in the late 1960s and early 70s, many began to discover a harsher truth, especially if your skin was black and your voice was loud. For the Black Panther Party, the biggest threat didn't just come from racism in the streets, it came from within the system itself. While the Panthers fed children, built clinics, and educated communities, J. Edgar Hoover, then director of the FBI, saw something else. He saw a movement that couldn't be controlled. A movement led by young, educated, passionate black men and women who were unafraid to call America out on its promises. And that terrified him. In 1969, Hoover called the Black Panther Party the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. Not because they had tanks or bombs, because they had people, ordinary people, thousands of them, listening, organizing, hoping, believing that they could change the world. And Hoover made it his mission to crush that hope. The weapon? A secret FBI operation called COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program. It was designed to infiltrate, disrupt, and destroy civil rights movements in America. At first, it targeted the Communist Party, then Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But by the late 60s, it had turned its full force on the Panthers. What did that look like? Informants sent into Panther chapters to stir conflict. Agents forging letters to pit leaders against each other. Phone taps, surveillance, fabricated crimes. Panthers were arrested on false charges, sometimes held without trial. Homes were raided at dawn. Offices were firebombed. The press was fed lies, and behind it all, a cold, deliberate campaign to make the movement implode from the inside. One of the most tragic results of this war was the death of Fred Hampton, a young Panther leader in Chicago. At just 21 years old, Fred was uniting black, white, and Latino activists, teaching that poor people of all races had common cause. He was brilliant, compassionate, and fiercely committed to justice, and he was marked for elimination. In December 1969, as Fred slept in his apartment beside his pregnant fiancée, police, working with the FBI, raided the home. Over 90 bullets were fired. Fred was killed instantly. The official story claimed it was a shootout. But years later, documents proved the truth. The FBI had coordinated the attack, with help from an informant who had drugged Fred before the raid. Fred Hampton's murder sent shockwaves through the movement, and it wasn't the only case. Across the country, Panther leaders were arrested, exiled, or killed. Some disappeared altogether. Many local chapters collapsed under the weight of paranoia, burnout, and fear. The media continued to paint the Panthers as violent, extremist, dangerous. But few Americans knew the extent to which the government had waged war against its own citizens. Imagine waking up each day trying to feed your community, knowing there might be a knock at your door in the dark. Imagine running a free clinic while being followed by unmarked cars. Imagine watching your closest friends vanish or die, not at the hands of criminals, but law enforcement sworn to serve and protect. That was the reality for the Panthers in the early 1970s. And yet, even under relentless pressure, many refused to give up. They kept the programs running as long as they could. They supported one another in exile, in prison, in silence. Because at its heart, the Panther movement wasn't about ego or power. It was about love. Love for their people, their neighborhoods, and their future. For older Americans today, especially those who remember that time, there's something haunting in this story. Many of us grew up believing in democracy, justice, and the Constitution. To see how easily those principles were bent to silence a movement is not just heartbreaking, it's a warning. COINTELPRO may have succeeded in weakening the Panthers, but it could not erase their message, and it could not erase their impact. In fact, decades later, the U.S. government was forced to acknowledge the illegal nature of these operations. Settlements were paid, files were unsealed, but no amount of paperwork could undo the lives lost, the families broken, or the trust shattered. In our next episode, we'll explore how the Black Panther Party evolved after the storm, how it fragmented, adapted, and left behind a legacy that still shapes America today. From community health to political activism, the story isn't over. If this episode moved you, we invite you to subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who remembers, or needs to remember, that freedom is never given. It is demanded, and sometimes it comes at a terrible price.